got busy and called his household together and told them what had gone down, and they got scared. Next, the king called Abraham. "What's up with this man? What did I ever do to you? Just who do you think you are?" "Sorry, man," Abraham said. "Listen, I got here and I got a little scared, I thought this is a godless place, and if they think that she's my old lady, they'll kill me. And anyway, she's my half-sister, so I said, 'Listen, woman, tell the folks that you're my sister.' And she did. So King Abimelech took sheep and oxen and servants and gave them to Abraham along with his old lady. And he said to Abraham, 'You decide any place in my kingdom you want to live, and it's yours, okay?' And to Sarah he said, 'I'm going to lay 1,000 silver pieces on you for any embarrassment you might have. Now I've settled things, right?' And Abraham prayed to the Almighty and asked him to cure the king and his women, because the Almighty had laid barrenness on the women to deal with them for taking Abraham's old lady. The birth of Isaac. The Almighty kept his word, and Sarah got pregnant. She gave birth to a baby boy in Abraham's old age, and Abraham named him Isaac, because that means laughter. 8 days later, Abraham circumcised him, just like the Almighty had told him to. Abraham was 100 years old. And Sarah said, "God has brought me laughter. All who hear me will be happy with me. Who would have thought I'd have a baby for my old man? I gave my man a child when he was 100 years old." After a spell, the child grew and no longer nursed at his mama's breast. So Abraham gave a party. But Sarah noticed Ishmael teasing Isaac. She got bent out of shape, telling her old man, "Get rid of the slave girl and her boy. I don't want him sharing anything with my boy. I won't deal with it." But the Almighty told Abraham not to worry about his slave wife and her boy. "Go ahead, Abraham. Do what your wife wants, because Isaac is the one that I made my promise. Don't worry about anything, because they'll have what's theirs. And it really is not any of your business anymore." So Abraham gets up early the next morning and sends Hagar and Ishmael away and fills her water jug. Hagar went to Beersheba, not knowing where she was going, just walking around. When the water was gone, she put the kid down and walked away, saying, "I don't want to watch him die." Then she laid down in the dirt, crying. The Almighty was watching everything as it went down and sent an angel to Hagar. "Hagar, what's the matter with you? Look, the Almighty is watching out for you. Go on to your boy and put your arms around him. The Almighty will make a nation from his blood." So Hagar went to the boy, and before her very eyes she saw a well and filled her water jug. And the Almighty was right by Ishmael. He grew up in the country and became a dynamite teacher. And later, when he was a grown man, his mother put together a marriage for him with an Egyptian sister. A test of faith. The Almighty tested Abraham's faith and obedience. "Abraham," cried the Almighty. "What's happening, Lord?" replied Abraham. "I want you to take Isaac, your beloved son, and go to the land of Moriah, and sacrifice him as a burnt offering on the mountain which I'll show you." The next morning Abraham got up, chopped some wood for a fire, put a saddle on his donkey, and took Isaac and 2 younger brothers up to the place where the Almighty directed. On the 3rd day, Abraham saw the place far away. "Stay here with the mules," Abraham told the brothers. "Isaac and I will travel over there and then come back." Abraham made Isaac carry the wood on his shoulders, and he carried the knife and a flint to make the fire. And the 2 of them went up together. "Father," Isaac said, "we have everything to make a fire, but nothing to sacrifice. Where's the lamb?" "The Almighty will make things right, son," said Abraham. And up they went. When they got to the place above where the Almighty had told them to go, Abraham built an altar, put the wood down, made the fire, and then tied up his son Isaac and laid him on the altar. And just when Abraham was going to put his knife to his son's chest and kill him, the angel of the Almighty shouted down to him, "Abraham! Abraham!" "Yes, Lord," he answered. Put down your knife, man. It's okay. Now I know how much you care for the Almighty. For you would not even hold back someone you love from him. Abraham noticed the ram caught by the horns in a bush. He took the ram and sacrificed it instead of his boy. He named the place God Provides, and it is called that to this day. Then the angel of the Almighty called down to Abraham again. Because you didn't hold back from him, not even your son, the Almighty promises to give you big things. And the Almighty said, I will bless you many times over, and your blood shall survive through many ages. These brothers shall be so bad that they'll handle their enemies with ease, all because you obeyed me. So Abraham and Isaac returned to the brothers below. The death of Sarah. Sarah was 127 when she died. Abraham was so heartbroken over her death, he cried. Standing by her body, he said to the brothers of Heth, Here I am, a visitor in a strange land, with no place to bury my wife. Please, sell me a piece of land to bury her. Sure, the brothers replied. Look, Abraham, you're an okay brother with the Almighty, and it would be an honor to have you choose the finest burial ground we have so that you can bury her. Abraham bowed low and said, Since this is how you feel, please ask Ephraim, Zorar's son, to sell me the cave down there at the end of the field. I'll lay out the full price, whatever is agreed on, and it will become a permanent cemetery for my family. But Ephraim wouldn't hear of Abraham buying anything. No, man, listen. I give you the field and the cave. In front of everybody. I give it to you. Bury your dead. If you give it to me, said Abraham, let me pay you. Then I'll bury my dead. So Ephraim told him that the land was worth 400 shekels of silver. But what is money between us, said Ephraim. Just bury your dead. Abraham gave the shekels of silver to Ephron, and buried Sarah his wife there in the cave which was deeded to him for a burial place. Isaac gets a wife. Now Abraham was old and up in age, and the Lord had blessed him in many ways. It was important to Abraham that his son have a proper wife, especially since any sister Isaac married would have his grandkids. So Abraham called his servant over and told him to go to Abraham's hometown and find a proper sister. Since the servant was scared that he would make a mistake, he asked that the Almighty lend a hand. And because he had asked, the Almighty led him to a sister named Rebekah, who was related to Abraham anyway. And the sister was down with it because she was on the one with the Almighty herself. Her kinfolk said, Sister girl, may you become the mother of thousands, and may all your children possess the gates of those who hate them. The servant told Isaac all the things he had done, and Isaac brought her into his mother's tent and got busy, so that she became his wife. And he loved her so that it comforted him after his mother died. The death of Abraham. After Sarah's death, Abraham took another wife, and she had children for Abraham as well. But Abraham gave almost everything he owned to Isaac. Then Abraham died. He was an old man and full of years, and was mourned by his brothers. And the brothers Isaac and Ishmael buried Abraham in the cave where they had buried their mother, Sarah. Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah as his wife. Now Rebekah hadn't given Isaac any children, and Isaac pleaded with the Almighty so that Rebekah could conceive, and she did. But she was having a hard time. "What's happening with me?" she implored of God. And the Almighty said to her, "Two nations are inside of you. Two homeboys shall be separated from your body. One homeboy shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger." So Rebekah had twins, and the firstborn was red all over. He was like a hairy garment. They called him Esau. And as Esau was born, his brother took hold of the bottom of Esau's foot, so that his name became Jacob. And Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah had the babies. As the brothers grew, Esau was really a tough hunter, a man of the fields. But Jacob was kind of nerdy, living in a tent. And Isaac loved Esau because he ate the meat Esau killed. But Rebekah loved Jacob. Now Jacob cooked the stew, and Esau, who had been out in the fields, came in real tired. And Esau said to Jacob, "Please give me something to eat, because I'm so tired." But Jacob cut a deal. "Look, man, if you're so hungry, sell me your heritage." And Esau was so hungry, he thought he'd die. He said, "What good is heritage if I'm dead? So no problem." Then Jacob asked him to swear to it, man. And Esau sold his birthright to Jacob. Jacob fed his brother stew, bread, and lentil, and Esau did eat. That's how Esau gave away his heritage. Jacob steals a blessing. When Isaac was old, and he didn't see so hot, he called his oldest boy Esau to his bedside. "Here I am, Dad," said Esau. And Isaac implored his son to take his weapon and get some meat for him to eat, and he would bless him well before he died. Now Rebekah heard this, and when her son Esau went into the field, she went to her son Jacob and told him what she heard. "Now your dad asked Esau to bring him something from the field so that he could eat it and bless him and die. Now I want you to do as I say. Go and get me 2 good-looking young goats, and I will make up a dish your father loves. You take it to your dad so that he can eat it, and the blessing will be yours before he dies." But Jacob was doubtful. "Look, Ma, I'm sure you realize that Esau is a hairy man, and I'm, well, hairless. Perhaps Dad will feel me and know that I'm trying to run a game on him. Then he'll curse me instead of blessing me. No way." But his mother was ahead of him. "Let any curse be on me. Just do as I say. I know what I'm doing." And Jacob went and did as his mother said. His mother hit the pots and cooked up a righteous dinner for her husband. And she took the good-looking threads from Esau's closet and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And then she wrapped the skins of the goat on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. And giving him the food, she had Jacob go visit his dad. "Hey, Dad," said Jacob, posing as Esau. "Who's there?" said Isaac. "It's Esau, your firstborn. I fixed things like you said, Dad." But Isaac was doubtful. "How can you have done this so quickly, boy?" "'Cause the Almighty brought it to me." So Isaac said to Jacob, "Please, come near so I can feel you. You might not be Esau." Jacob sat as close as he dared to his father, and Isaac felt him and said, "You sound like Jacob, but the hands are Esau's." He didn't recognize him, but he blessed him, and afterwards he asked, "Are you really my son, Esau?" And Jacob said, "Yeah, Dad." So Isaac had him come over again to feed him. Jacob fed him and gave him wine to drink. Then Isaac said to him, "Come and kiss me, my son." And Jacob came near again, and Isaac smelled the smell of his clothing and blessed him, saying, "Surely the smell of my son is like the smell of the earth, which the Almighty has blessed. So may God give you all the dew of heaven, the fatness of the earth, and loads of grain and wine. Let brothers serve you, and nations bow down to you. You'll be master over your brothers, and your mother's sons will bow down to you. Curses on anyone who curses you, and blessings on all those who bless you." Then it happened that as soon as Jacob left, and Isaac was finished blessing Jacob, Esau came in from hunting and fixing up his dad's favorite gifts. "Hey, Dad, come on and eat the meat that I brought you and bless me." "What's going on?" asked Isaac. "Who are you?" And Esau told him, "I'm your oldest kid, Dad." And it turned Isaac off for a minute. And he cried, "Who? Where is the one who brought me hunted game and fed me? I've blessed him, and you've got to know that blessing will stick." When Esau heard his father, he was furious. "Come on, Dad. Bless me too. You've got to bless me too." And Isaac was sad. "Your brother got one over on me, and I've given him your blessing." And Esau said, "But isn't that just like Jacob? He's gotten over on me twice. First he takes my heritage, now my blessing. Haven't you saved a blessing for me?"
"Yeah,"
said Isaac.
"but I've made him your master, and all brothers I've given him as servants. Grain and wine I've also given him. What can I do for you, my son?"
And Esau cried, "Have you only one blessing? Bless me, even me," he cried.
So Isaac said, "Behold, by your sword will you live, and will serve your brother. And when you've had enough, and become restless, you will break the bonds from your neck."
So Esau hated brother Jacob because of his dad's blessing. Esau promised that when Isaac died, as soon as the days of mourning were over, he was wasting Jacob under no uncertain terms. But their mother Rebekah called Jacob and said to him, "Look, son, your brother is waiting until he can kill you. You've got to get out of here." And Rebekah sent Jacob to live with her brother Laban. "Stay there until your brother cools off, and he forgets what you have done to him." Jacob leaves home. So Isaac called Jacob and blessed him, but admonished him,
"Don't get with any of these sisters from Canaan. Go where your mother has family. May God Almighty bless you, and make you fruitful, and give you many descendants that may assemble the people. And you shall have the blessings promised to my father Abraham, to you and yours, so that you'll inherit the land where you are a foreigner for now, which God gave to Abraham."
And Isaac sent Jacob away. When he came to a certain place, he laid down for the night, since the sun was going down. He took a stone of that place and placed it at his head, so that he could sleep. And he dreamed. In the dream, a ladder was set on the ground, and its top reached to heaven. And the angels were going up and down it. The Almighty stood at the top and said, "I am the Lord of Abraham, and the God of Isaac. I am going to give you the very land you sleep on." And the Almighty added, "Your heirs will be like dust, and blow across the earth, east to west, north to south. And in you and in your seed all the families of the earth will be blessed." And he charged that he would always be with him wherever Jacob went. And one day Jacob would return to that land, because
"I am not going to leave you until I have done all I said I would."
Even though Jacob knew that the Almighty had been in that place, the next morning he was afraid. He felt that the place was actually the house of God and the gateway to heaven. Then Jacob vowed, as long as the Almighty was with him and kept him going the right way and fed him and gave him clothes to wear, he would go back to his father's house in peace, and the Almighty shall be his God. The trials of Jacob. So Jacob went on his way and came upon a group of people from the east. And looking out, he saw 3 flocks of sheep lying by a well. A big stone was on top of the well, covering the opening. Now when it was time to water the sheep, they would roll off the stone. Jacob asked them where they were from, and they told him, Haran. So he asked them if they knew his uncle, Laban, the son of Nahor. And they said, "Yeah, we know him." "And is he well?" "Yeah, he's well. And look, his daughter Rachel is coming with the sheep." And Jacob said, "But it's rather early. It is not time for the cattle to be rounded up. So water the sheep and go feed them." But they could not until all the flocks were together. The sheep could then be watered. But when Rachel came near the well, Jacob rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of his uncle Laban. And he kissed Rachel and told her that he was Laban's nephew and Rebekah's son. So Laban went down to meet him and brought him home with him. "Look, you're my blood," said Laban. "Stay." And Jacob stayed a month. Now Jacob helped around the house, and his uncle didn't want him working for nothing. "A man's got to get paid," his uncle told him. "What can I give you?" Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the oldest was Leah, And then, of course, there was Rachel, who was the younger. Leah's eyes was delicate, but Rachel was so fine. Now Jacob loved Rachel and told his uncle, look, Uncle, I'll work for 7 years for Rachel. And Laban said, okay, man, it's better that she be with you than be given to another man. Stay. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and it seemed that they were but a few days away from getting hitched, and Jacob was ready. Give me her, man. I'm ready. And a feast was made. All the brothers of Laban's household came together. But Laban pulled the switch and gave Leah to Jacob, and Jacob laid with her. The next morning, Jacob saw Leah. He went to his uncle. What's this? You dissing me? I worked for Rachel, and now you deceive me. And Laban said, listen, man, I just couldn't break with tradition. You know the oldest girl's got to get married first. Sorry. Look, handle her for a week like tradition says, and I'll give you Rachel for, say, another 7 years. So Jacob was down for the week, and Laban also gave Jacob Rachel. Now Jacob's nose was opened for Rachel, and he loved her more. He was down with her as often as possible. But the Almighty saw that Leah was unloved, and he let her have a baby with Jacob, while Rachel he did not. And Leah had a baby boy named Reuben, 'cause she thought, now my old man will love me. She had another baby, a son, and named him Simeon, because the Almighty knew that she was still unloved. And when she had a third child, she named him Levi, because she said, surely my old man will love me now. After having a fourth child for Jacob, she praised the Almighty and stopped having kids. Jacob flees his uncle's crib. Now Jacob heard the gossip coming from Laban's sons, who said, Jacob has been jocking our dad and taking what's his. He's gotten wealthy off our dad. And Jacob became hip to the fact that Laban felt somewhat the same way. And the Almighty gave charge that Jacob should leave his uncle's land and return to his father's place. And Jacob told Leah and Rachel that he was leaving because he didn't think their father was too happy anyway, and was waiting for a chance to take care of him. He told them that he had been fair with their father, but their father hadn't been on the up and up even in the beginning. Look, ladies, even the Almighty sees what your father is doing to me, and has asked me to leave here. So Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, is there anything of our father's that belongs to us? We're practically strangers to him, for he sold us and also completely consumed our dough. Look, anything that was taken from our father and given to you is ours anyway. So do whatever God told you to do. We're square with it. So Jacob took his family and set them upon camels to drive themselves out of Laban's hometown. And he took his flock and possessions, but Rachel stole the household idols that were her father's. And like a thief in the night, Jacob took off without Laban's knowledge or permission. He headed towards the mountains. On the third day, Laban became aware that Jacob was gone, and he got his homeboys together to take after them. But in the middle of the night, the Almighty came to Laban in a dream and warned him, be careful how you speak about my boy Jacob. So Laban caught up with Jacob and admonished him for leaving so secretly. What's with you, man? You steal away in the middle of the night, take my daughters, and then steal from my house. Why did you do this? I'd have let you go. Really? You didn't even let me kiss my grandkids goodbye. Look, he added, I could really jock you for this, but your God said to me to watch my step. And Jacob answered, okay, man, I was afraid. I thought that maybe you would take my old ladies away from me. But as for stealing from you, man, if you find anything that belongs to you, you can have it, and let death be on whoever did steal from you. But Jacob didn't know that his wife Rachel had copped the idols. Laban looked in Leah's tent, the servants' tent, the 2 maids, but he didn't find them. And then he went to Rachel's tent, but Rachel had taken the household idols and put them in the camel's saddle and sat on them. And Laban searched and didn't find them. As she told her father she couldn't rise to meet him since it was that time of the month. Because of this, Laban didn't find the idols. Now Jacob was miffed and told Laban, "What is this, man? You accuse me of taking your things. You've searched everywhere. It's an embarrassment, man, an insult. I've been with you for more than 20 years, taking more stuff off you than the law allows. You don't know how this galls me." And Laban had to agree that he had been a bit hasty. "Look, let's not sweat the small stuff. The Almighty sees everything, right? Let's just agree to get along." Jacob agreed and swore on his daddy's grave that he would. He offered a sacrifice on the mountain and broke bread with his brothers. They all broke bread together and stayed around the mountain till morning. The next day, Laban got up early, kissed his grandkids and his daughters and blessed them, and then went home. Homeward bound. Jacob left Laban's land. Angels of the Lord met him along the way. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is the Lord's base." Then Jacob sent messengers to his brother Esau. His message was, "I've been to Laban's land and stayed until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male and female servants, and now I'm asking for leniency." The messenger returned to Jacob and said, "Your brother's coming to meet you, and he's got 400 brothers with him." And Jacob was real scared, and he divided the people that were with him. "Look, if Esau attacks one or the other, then the others can escape." He set out to pray. And Jacob asked the Almighty, "Look, I know I'm not worth all this, but I'm asking that you show mercy. Deliver me from the wrath of my brother Esau, because I'm scared for me and my family. Lord, you promised me to treat me well, and I'm asking only that you remember." And that night a man wrestled with Jacob until the break of day. And when he saw that he couldn't beat up on Jacob and win, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip and moved it out of joint. Even though his hip was out of joint, Jacob held on, and the man said, "Let me go, man! It's almost daytime." But Jacob wouldn't let go. "Not till you bless me." "What's your name?" "Jacob." "Okay. Your name is no longer Jacob. It'll now be Israel, because you wrestled with both God and man and came out on top." Making up for lost time. Now Jacob looked up, and coming around the bend was Esau with 400 men. So he told part of his children to go with Leah and part with Rachel, and the rest with his maidservants. And he came before Esau and bowed to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. But Esau ran to meet him and hugged him tight, weeping and kissing his neck. And when he looked up, he noticed the women and children. "Who are they?" he said. And Jacob answered, "My kids and family, who the Almighty blessed me with." And the family came up and bowed, Leah and her children, Rachel and her kids. And Esau asked, "What's up?" To which Jacob begged Esau to accept his gifts, but Esau refused. "I have enough," said Esau. "You don't have to buy me. Come on, join me." But Jacob begged off for a moment, saying that the family was tired from the journey. "They're weak. We'll catch up with you." "Well, let me leave some of my people here for you," said Esau, "so you won't have to rush." And then he asked, "What else can I do for you? I want you to like me." And Jacob went and took up residence. Death of Rachel and Isaac. The Almighty told Jacob, "Get up and go into Bethel and live there." And he charged Jacob to make an altar for him. Jacob got his family together again and said, "No more false gods. Clean yourselves up and change your clothes. We're moving." Then God appeared to Jacob one more time and blessed him. And the Almighty said, "Your name is Jacob now, but in the future you will be called Israel." So Jacob called himself Israel. Also the Almighty told him, "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. Nations will come from your blood, as will royalty." When Jacob came back, he was told that Rachel was in labor with their child, and the midwife told her to be calm. Nothing is going to happen to this child. But Rachel died in labor, though not before her son was born, and she named him Ben-Oni. Jacob, however, called him Benjamin. Now Jacob had 12 sons, and his brother Esau had many descendants as well. After Rachel died, Jacob took his sons to be with his dad Isaac before he died. Isaac had lived to be 108 years old. Esau and Jacob buried him together as brothers. Joseph's dreams gets him into trouble. Joseph was loved by his father more than all the children because he was born when Jacob was old. Jacob made him a jacket of many colors. And when Jacob's sons saw that he loved Joseph more, they got bent out of shape. They hated Joseph, especially since they thought him such a brat. So when he started having dreams and told them those dreams, they were really peeved. Here's one of Joseph's dreams. Man, there we were, binding sheaves in the field. Then guess what? My sheaf rose and stood upright, and your sheaf stood around my sheaf and bowed. Imagine! And his brothers said to him, What? You think we will serve you, you selfish brat? Think again! The brothers grumbled among themselves then, hating Joseph even more. Then Joseph dreamed another dream, and he said to his brothers, Guess what? I've dreamed something else. In this dream, he told them that the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to him. Ain't that a lick? He also told his father, who fussed gently at him. What is it with this dreaming stuff, boy? You want us to bow down to you? Get a life. He admonished him. You gotta stop with this dreaming. Still, Israel thought hard about what Joseph was saying. Later, when the brothers went to feed the stock, they decided that they had had enough of Joseph and his puny dreams. So they were going to waste him. When Jacob sent Joseph down to his brothers, not knowing what they wanted to do, the brothers had already hatched a plan. When Joseph went looking for his brothers, they ambushed him. Look, here comes the dreamer. Is he ever gonna get it? But Reuben heard all about it and what they had intended to do. In fact, if it wasn't for Reuben, Joseph would have been wasted right then and there. But using his head, he threw Joseph into a pit somewhere in the wilderness, ordering his brothers not to touch him. Okay? I mean it. Reuben told them that way Joseph's blood wouldn't be on their hands. But he really was planning on saving Joseph later. But the brothers had other ideas. Before Joseph was thrown into the pit, the brothers ripped Joseph's tunic off his body, and then they grabbed some grub. And while they were eating, they saw some traders who sold spices, balm, and myrrh, who were on their way to Egypt. So Judah said, Look, let's not kill Joseph, let's sell him. And the brothers agreed, Yeah, come on, get the brat out of the city. So the brothers pulled Joseph from the pit and sold him. The traders took Joseph down to Egypt with them. When Reuben went back to the pit, Joseph was gone. His brothers simply told him, He's out of here, man. Reuben didn't know what his brothers had done, and he was really scared. The brothers, though, had to think fast. So to make their plan work, they took Joseph's coat and killed a goat. Then they dipped his coat in its blood so that it would look like some wild beast had eaten the boy. They took it to Jacob, who knew that the coat belonged to Joseph, saying, A wild beast has gotten hold of the boy. Poor Joseph had been torn to pieces. Jacob was devastated. He tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and cried for many days. His sons and daughters tried to comfort him, but he wouldn't have it. He loved Joseph so much. The trials of Joseph. Meanwhile, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. And the Almighty was riding Joseph well, 'cause he didn't leave him even for a minute. And Joseph was in good stride with the Almighty, so that soon the masters of Joseph made him an overseer. The Egyptians were blessed having Joseph around. And Joseph was given much responsibility. So much responsibility, in fact, that Joseph was in total control. Joseph was good-looking. He was one fine, well-built brother. And the boss's wife noticed it. Everywhere Joseph went, she was somewhere around smacking her lips. "Let's get busy," she begged. "You don't know how much you really turned me on." But Joseph couldn't betray a homeboy that way. Also, he couldn't jock the Almighty either, 'cause it wouldn't be right sleeping with somebody else's old lady. So he told the woman no. And the homegirl was really peeved, but she wasn't giving up no matter what. One day, the homegirl got a chance to be alone with Joseph, and she pulled herself up on him and begged him to sleep with her. "Come on, Joseph, how can you turn this down? Ain't I fine?" And looking him up and down, she said, "What's a girl gotta do to get with you?" But Joseph wasn't having any of it, so he got as far away from her as he could. But hell has no fury like a woman scorned, and the homegirl set Joseph up, saying to the other servants, "Look what my husband has brought into my house. This man is a Hebrew and tried to rape me." She repeated the story to her husband, who was furious that Joseph would have betrayed him this way, although he hadn't. So they threw the homeboy into jail for a crime he didn't commit. But all in all, the Almighty stood by Joseph, 'cause he knew that Joseph hadn't done the wild thing. And the guards in prison liked him too, and were easy on him. In fact, they trusted him to watch over and help with the other prisoners. And all this happened 'cause the Almighty was in Joseph's corner. The telling of the dreams. Now the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt fell into disfavor, and the Pharaoh sent the homeboys to jail. And these two were put into the custody of Joseph, who was still in jail, for the lie Potiphar's wife told. While in prison, the butler and baker both had dreams that troubled them. It really worried their heads. The next morning, Joseph noticed that the two prisoners were bent out of shape over something, so he asked, "What's up, fellows?" And they told him, "We had nightmares, each of us, and there's nothing funny about them. There's no one to tell us what they mean. If we're gonna worry, we ought to know what they mean." And Joseph told them that the interpretations of dreams belonged to the Almighty, and asked them to tell him about their dreams. So the butler said, "Well, in my dream a vine was in front of me, and the vine had 3 branches. It was as if the vines blossomed and made beautiful grapes. Then Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took these grapes and mashed them and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand." Joseph said, "This is what it means. The 3 branches are 3 days, and in 3 days Pharaoh will forgive you and give you back your old gig, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand just like you did before when you were the butler." And then Joseph made the butler promise that when things were righteous for him, "You won't forget me, man." And Joseph felt comfortable with the butler and laid out his life story. He told the butler how he was stolen from his family and didn't really belong in jail, especially since he hadn't done anything. When the baker saw that the butler's dream didn't seem so bad, he told Joseph his dream. "In my dream were 3 white baskets on my head. They were all kinds of baked goods for the Pharaoh, but the birds ate them out of the baskets on my head." And Joseph said, "This is the meaning. The 3 baskets are 3 days, and within those 3 days Pharaoh will hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh. Amen. I'm really sorry." And on the 3rd day was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave the butler back his job and hung the baker. But the butler was so happy to get his gig back, he forgot all about telling the Pharaoh of Joseph. 7 years of plenty, 7 years of wasted. 2 years passed and Joseph was still locked up. And it happened that Pharaoh had his own nightmares, and they shook him up pretty bad. Pharaoh's dream was, Pharaoh was standing by a river, and suddenly came from the river 7 really nice-looking cows, fine and fat, and they ate in the meadow. But later 7 other cows, which were ugly and skinny, stood by the other cows and ate up the fat, fine cows. And Pharaoh would wake up in a cold sweat. And then he'd dream again. And this was Pharaoh's dream. 7 heads of grain came up on one stalk, plump and good. And then 7 thin heads from the east came up after the good ones, and the 7 thin heads ate the 7 plump ones. And Pharaoh was scared. He sent for the wise men of his country, but they couldn't tell him what his dreams meant. In fact, it looked like no one could help the brother out. It was simply slow. But